Hello, everyone, and welcome to Level the Field Leadership. My name is Dr. Rachel Gallardo, and I'm very excited, very thankful that you have decided to tune in for the next couple of heartbeats that you might possess to listen and really improve your leadership style. If this is your first time, then I just want to say welcome. We're not going to hold you hostage or ask you to do anything. But if this is not your first time, I do ask that you maybe make sure to comment and subscribe because whenever you do that, it gives me positive feedback on what's working, what's not. And also share this with other people because you never know who you might be helping. As many of you know, I do believe that leadership can be very challenging, but my goal is to hopefully give you tools so that way you can level the field of those challenges that you encounter in the work environment. And whenever you have those tools at your disposal, because you really never know what you're going to need, it does kind of make your leadership journey that much more manageable. I also believe that workplace burnout is very real. So anything we can do to reduce burnout and fatigue in our leadership roles will have a positive impact on our team. It'll have a positive impact on us. It'll have a positive impact on our families. And so it really and truly is a domino effect. If we can limit burnout in one area, it's going to be great for all areas of our life. So with that, I want to go ahead and introduce our guest for today. His name is John Gallagher, and he's got over 25 years of experience in leadership and lean. He is a widely regarded CEO, and he's just very well known amongst other senior executives. He's published books, articles, interviews, and he's also talked about his own personal transformational journey to health. And this was actually documented in Men's Health, so you can also go look up that information too. He is the host of the Uncommon Leaders podcast. So if you want to go check that out after you listen to this one, feel free to do so. And he's worked, like I said, with CEOs, pastors, coaches, authors, up and coming leaders, including people like Jeff Henderson and Jeremy Scott. So happy to have you with us today, John. Thank you so much for joining me.
Rachel, I am looking forward to our conversation. I appreciate that kind intro, and I appreciate what you're doing as well with your podcast. Good stuff. I'm
Yeah,
looking forward to it.
yeah. Well, for those of you that are returning, you know that I kind of like to base our topic around a certain scripture, and one that was kind of on my heart whenever I was kind of doing some research for this particular episode and looking up some information about John and his experience. It really came from Jeremiah 1:5. Before I formed you in the womb, I knew you. Before you were born, I set you apart. So, uncommon leadership. We see so much about what a leader should or shouldn't do. And it seems like there's so many different resources that are telling us how we should or shouldn't respond. And it can be really hard to kind of find our identity as leaders. So, John, I guess my first question is, how do you define an uncommon leader when there's so many people that are trying to replicate what other people are doing?
No, I appreciate that question right off the bat. I mean, still from the Uncommon Leader podcast and some of the themes that we have in there. When I think of uncommon, there's a quote that comes to mind for me. And by the way, I appreciate that you also utilize scripture. We can talk about that in terms of how the Growing Champions company was formed here in a little bit. But the quote that I think about from an uncommon leader standpoint comes from Maya Angelou, and it's one that's used a bunch. But people won't remember what you said. They won't remember what you did. They remember how you made them feel. And there's
Mhm.
a story that comes to mind actually with my wife in terms of uncommon. They're able to take the ordinary experience and turning it into an extraordinary experience. And that's really about caring for individuals. The story with my wife, I think she's got a gift, a spiritual gift of hospitality and making others feel welcome inside of our home and frankly, inside of the areas that she leads in our church and our community as well. And I, am the type that, you give me the ketchup bottle, you give me the mustard bottle, I'll set it out on the table and we'll use it and it'll work really well. But she has the ability to change the flavor of the ketchup and the mustard. But she puts the ketchup and mustard in these little dishes. I remember one time she had actually purchased this one that looked like a tomato, one that looked like a lemon, and there was another one that went in that was orange that had I don't know if it was the brown mustard or whatever it was, but just by transferring the common ketchup from the Heinz ketchup in a bottle to a little cup in a tomato and presenting it for others to use and making it that much more special. Actually, to me, almost changed the flavor of the tomato. And it's something that was early on when we were married. I'm like, you have an ability to take what is common and turn it into the uncommon. So as leaders, we've got to overall, I think, as we continue to look forward, look for those opportunities in situations to make an impact on individuals, to make them feel different. And I think that's what uncommon leaders are able to do.
hmm hmm Yeah, it does require kind of going that extra step.
Hmm.
Kind of because I mean, there's it depends on the situation. Sometimes I'm just whatever, it's ketchup on the table, you're fine. But then there are other instances where I really feel like kind of going above and beyond. And I think it's that intentionality of how can I make this just like 1 degree better? And your wife getting those little things that can really make it memorable, I think helps make things 1 degree better and really shows her abilities as a leader to just take it one step further than what your normal, average, everyday person would have done.
Absolutely. I mean, I think of it again, I think of it in the form of just simply taking the time that rather than sending a text message for a birthday card, you actually handwrite a note and send it to them in the mail. It just has a different feeling. And it's that little bit of an extra step and you use the word I think is really powerful, and that's intentionality. It
Mhm.
requires an intentionality on your part, a discipline on your part to make those things happen because they don't just happen. You have to plan those things into your day to be able to create those experiences and make folks feel more appreciated.
Yeah, yeah. And I mean, you've had an opportunity to interview all types of leaders, just with your background and your coaching and just the different type of people that you've come in contact with. What would you say are key components of really great leaders? But then what makes those great leaders so what gives them that extra flavor that makes them so great?
No, I appreciate it. Again, I know you teed me up with this question prior to that, and you almost took my answer with regards to that intentionality. But those leaders that are able to convert that into uncommon results, use intentionality, make that happen. Look, you've touched on this a little bit, and I appreciate it. Those leaders can inspire, encourage, and equip. And you talk about, giving your listeners the information they need to make things happen, but also giving them the inspiration and encouragement to go out there and do that. And so I think those leaders that are uncommon, they have an intentionality. They schedule their priorities to make some of those things happen, whether it's self-development and your daily reading habits, or whether it's development of your team members and having regular one-on-ones with a structured approach that you use for coaching questions. Those uncommon leaders are very intentional. The second part of that I've noticed in some of those leaders is that they ultimately have this healthy discontent for what I say is the status quo. They're
Mm,
never really quite satisfied with where they are. And I believe the uncommon leaders recognize they have an awareness they were called to be more than they are today. And they recognize what that is and they can see that out in the future, what's possible. And then once they identify that gap between where they are today and where they want to be, they're able to take those steps they need to close that gap on a regular basis. And when they're able to close that gap, that's when you start, and especially when you do it with intentionality, that's when they start to see excellence. A quote I often use in some of my coaching is good intention without good discipline just leads to excuses. But good
mm,
intention with good discipline leads to excellence. And that excellence only happens on purpose. You got to schedule those things.
mm-hmm, mm-hmm. Yeah, I agree with you 100%. I have one day in my Outlook calendar. I mean, I live and breathe by my Outlook calendar. I know exactly what I'm doing each moment of the day. Not to say that there's not some flexibility in there, because if you overschedule yourself, that's not good either. But once a week, I have just a block of time it's just called focus time. And so that's if I'm working on a certain project, if there's certain writing,
Mm.
assignment that I'm doing, if I'm preparing for a podcast or anything like that, that's just my intentional focus time for that week. And it's amazing to me how oftentimes I don't need the full 2 hours. I just need 30 to 45 minutes of just quiet, like where I shut
Hmm.
off everything else. And it's amazing what you can get done whenever you hyper focus on something for 30 to 45 minutes. And then I have additional time left over to go back and do whatever else is that needs to be done. But I agree with you. If I don't schedule that intentional time, it just time kind of runs away from you, and we don't realize how long we've let that book project, or I've put off training for that particular race or whatever, because we're not intentional about it. It's not scheduled in our day-to-day lives, and time goes by more quickly than we realize.
Rachel, you touched on it, and you're exactly right. It goes, we all get the same number of hours. We get the 24 hours in a day. We get the, 86,400 seconds. We all have that time, and you can't get that time back. I love the concept of blocking that time out to work on things. Just a term that I use is the 47 most productive minutes of a leader's day, where you actually block off an hour, but you set a timer and you go airplane mode for 47 minutes. No science to 47. You touched on my fitness journey as well. That's kicked off with the 47-day transformation. But we underestimate what we can get done in 47 minutes. You set that timer, you know that's going to go fast if you can put your life, if you will, into airplane mode. Turn these great distractions we call productivity machines of iPhones off, turn the text messages and the social media off, turn your emails that are coming in off, close your door and put a red sign on the outside, and just focus for 47 minutes. When that timer goes off after 47 minutes, to your point, you won't realize how productive you've been. You're going to want to keep going. But it's
Mhm.
really, you need some of that time, as you said, to re-enter as well. Now I got to go and check in and see if somebody really did need me in those 47 minutes, and check the text and check the emails that came in. And heaven forbid, in the world of back to back to back meetings we have, you get a chance to take a little bit of a break and go to the restroom before the next meeting gets started.
Right. Right. Well, and I think that that goes back, and that's why the particular scripture that I picked for this particular episode really kind of spoke to me, because it says, "Before I knew you, I set you apart." And
Mm,
so I really do believe that each individual person is given a certain skill set. They're given a certain abilities. They're given a certain amount of time to be able to do whatever it is that they have been called to do. And it really makes me sad to know that there are people out there that are really and truly not living up to their full potential, because of distractions, or maybe there's some imposter syndrome going on, or there's some sort of self-doubt. And, I really do hope that people can really see the gifts and abilities that they have, and then just exploit the heck out of them for a greater purpose.
absolutely.
And this kind of, it we talked about it a little bit, but just to kind of do a little bit of a deeper dive, how important is it for leaders to lead themselves? I mean, is it really and truly, does it really matter that much if I skip my focus time? Does it really matter that much
Mm.
if nobody really knows that I'm really focusing in and trying to do that transformational work? Or should I just look at the transactional and keep going?
No, I appreciate the question, Rachel. And both of us have, our books on our shelves behind us, and many of those books that sit up on my shelf are those leadership books. And your question on um, is it that important to develop self? I believe it's the most important foundational step. John Maxwell, in one of the best leadership books I've ever read, was the 21 Irrefutable Laws of Leadership. He refers to it as the law of the lid. And ultimately, you and your team and/or your organization, or again, the team that you lead in your church, or the team that you lead, frankly, at your home, is only going to rise as high as you do from a leadership standpoint. You don't want to be the lid on that organization. So those uncommon leaders have got an uncommon quest, if you will, to continue to grow their leadership skills so that they can continue to inspire and encourage others to bear fruit in their lives and make that happen. And I think that there's really four steps inside of like a personal organizational transformation, and that first step is that self development. And when you're committed to that, then you can go to the second step, which is developing your team. Third step is those structures and processes that you need to be intentional about it. And the fourth is ultimately that sustainable, eternal impact. Whether that's profitability that you measure, or frankly, whether it's legacy that you measure in terms of your leadership development, that you can't have that if you don't really complete the first step, and that is your own personal development.
Hmm. Hmm. Well, and quite frankly, you can't tell other people to do something if you're not willing to do it yourself, right?
So much
I,
more is caught than taught. Absolutely. I mean,
yeah.
that went back to really my personal transformation story, and I remember that. I mean, I had a health scare that really drove me there, but I was, consulting at that point in time as well, when I was, so we'll say, significantly overweight and out of shape. I'm like, how can I talk to someone and try to teach them the importance of disciplines if I'm not capable, frankly, of going over those disciplines myself? And again, whether that's in my health, whether that's in my spiritual development journey, how can I tell others to grow their faith if I'm not willing to be in the Word every day and dive into that Scripture? And ultimately, from a leadership standpoint in the business, how can I encourage others to grow if I'm not willing to grow myself? It's so important in all aspects of our life.
Hmm. Hmm. So how or what recommendation do you have for leaders to lean in and really do the hard things? I mean, I'm very curious about your health journey. Like, at what point, because that had to be very difficult to be like, okay, I'm not doing anything that's really benefiting me from a health standpoint, but now I have to start doing this thing. How do you start? How do you lean into actually getting that done?
Love the question and leaning in, and you've probably heard this before on from your other guests that are on the podcast, or even yourself in terms of sharing. But it starts with a choice, and ultimately, it's very important for us as leaders to recognize what our purpose is. The framework that I use, that I teach how to write that statement, is called "So what, now what, and so that." And you'll love this from a scriptural standpoint as well. But so what? What is the opportunity? In the case of my health, the opportunity was I wanted to be able to, at some point in time, when my kids had kids, to be able to play basketball with a grandchild, or be able to sit down at a tea table with a granddaughter and have tea, and make that happen. And physically, I was on a journey that I wasn't going to go. So that was the opportunity. The other side of the opportunity is sometimes a problem. My health was not going to allow me to live that long. There's no doubt about it. But that "so that" is the verb. It's the action. What action must I take? Excuse me. The so now what is the action that I must take? I must improve. I must lose weight. I must exercise more. Whatever that is. But it comes to the "so that." It's the purpose, so that I can live out my purpose and be there for my grandchildren in the future, so that they remember me for the time to come. Having a connection to that "so that," that purpose, is very important. That will frankly drive you into being able to do those hard things. I think about that. If you're pretty clear on what your "so that" is, it's going to get you up in the morning when the alarm goes off without hitting the snooze button. It's going to help you hit the floor with your feet in the morning saying, I got to go out and get better. It's not like that every day. Let's not talk about, I mean, for me especially, I mean, I'm not motivated every day, but that "so that" statement inspires me to keep going. So much so that, again, on the physical journey, I like to have something to shoot for, something that's out there. And I was getting a little bit flat in terms of some of my workouts and things like that. And I went to a small, so having a group around you is very important. I have a small accountability group, 3 or 4 other guys. We text each other on a daily basis. I said, I think I need to do something hard, something I've not done before from a physical standpoint. And they're like, hey, let's do it. Let's do it together. And we signed up for our first Spartan race. At 56 years old, I did my first Spartan race, 10K
Wow.
with 25 obstacles that we completed together as a team. And so we like to have something together to shoot for
Yeah.
that's helpful as well. So I think it all starts off with that decision. It helps with a community that you have to make good things happen. And then ultimately just decide, that it is so important. I'm willing to do things, step outside my comfort zone and make that happen.
Yeah. Yeah. Yeah, and I think, from a health standpoint, I think people think that they have to do a complete and total overhaul right off the bat. And actually, smaller steps are more likely to be
Oh,
sustainable.
yes.
So even if it's, what, after dinner every night, I'm going to go for a 10-minute walk. Like just start there. And then
Start small.
after a couple of weeks, say, okay, well, maybe I can make that a 15-minute walk. And then maybe instead of having the extra cup of coffee, I'm going to have a glass of water. Like you'll be amazed at how small changes can really make a big difference. And if you make one change a week, by the end of the year, you've made 52 changes that can benefit you, and I think we just I love seeing these programs and, oh, if you take, do this whole entire health regimen, then you're going to be great, but it's not really sustainable. We have to incorporate small changes in our lives if we really want to make sure that they have a lasting impact.
Amen.
And
And
from a work environment standpoint, one example that comes to mind is if you've got somebody on your team that you know that you need to have a conversation with, and you keep putting it off and putting it off and putting it off, the longer you put off that conversation, the harder it's going to be. You've got to address it whenever the problem is small, because then if you wait and try to address it whenever the problem is really big, there are so many moving parts. You may have to get HR involved. Documentation has to come into place. Like there's so much more to it. Where if, 3 months ago, if you'd sat down and had that 15-minute uncomfortable conversation, you wouldn't be in the situation that you're currently in. Have you seen leaders kind of delay doing something that they know that they should be doing, and it actually came back to bite them bigger than they thought it would later?
all day long, myself included, by the way, in terms of having those tough conversations. And it requires framework to get there. And, you did a nice job in terms of saying it gets, more. I look at it like this: the biggest expense is from the time when you make the decision that you need to have a conversation or you need to make a change to when you actually put that in there. That's when things get really expensive. To your point, it could be HR cost, it could be legal cost inside the conversation. But really, in between that time, it's the continued tolerating of maybe poor behavior that you've observed that has to happen and how it impacts the culture of the organization. That price is so expensive when you don't do that. So, what are the reasons we don't do that? I mean, we want to be liked as leaders, and that's one of the biggest barriers that exists inside of our space versus actually being respected as a leader. And so we need a framework because it's not easy. People, aren't necessarily developed to receive or give good feedback. A framework that's worked for me, and I have a specific story that worked really well. I had an employee years ago that I was ready. To your point, I had had enough. I waited too long to have the tough conversation. I was just it would be easier for me just to let this person go. But I learned this framework: situation, behavior, impact, action, how to have that tough conversation that allowed me to write down the things that I wanted to say. And I was ready to terminate this person. This is 30 years ago almost. And by learning to have that framework in front of me and have that conversation, first thing that happened is he said, "That's the best feedback I've ever received. Why
Mm.
didn't you tell me this before?" And I'm like, I was just relieved. I mean, I almost kind of slumped over in terms of how much stress I had leading into the conversation. And not all
Right.
conversations go that well, but that individual is still with that same organization some 30 years later in an executive leadership role of a
Wow.
multi-billion dollar company. That is huge. And here I was as a leader getting ready to make a decision because I didn't know how to have a tough conversation. If we're going to grow, we need to learn to have those tough conversations, and frameworks, structures, and systems are there to help us to have those tough conversations.
Hmm. Hmm. Yeah, and you can't really say that you care about your team if you're not willing to give them the bad news and the good news.
Hmm.
You know,
Absolutely. I
it's
just wrote about
simple.
it today. It came out today in my pod. I mean, in terms of how this, or in my weekly newsletter, the difference in being kind and being nice. And,
Yeah.
I think the kindness is absolutely what we need more of, which is truth with grace, showing that we care about them, having grace for the situation. Absolutely. But frankly, sharing the truth. And that being nice is just being, showing grace and no truth. We don't get any growth from that situation. We've got to be able to, again, this goes back to scripture and being able to give someone the truth so that they can grow. If they don't know they need to change, how are we to expect them to change as a leader?
Right. Right. Yeah. I mean, you wouldn't let somebody just step off the curb and get hit by a car.
Hmm.
It's sometimes,
Absolutely.
you gotta yank them back and be like, look, this
Love
is
that
this is
analogy.
really and truly important. And then at that point, I mean, after you tell them, hey, here's the issue that I see happening, people still have free will, right? Like they can still
That's
make the
right.
choice of, you know what, I know that that's what John told me, but I don't agree with him. I don't think he's right. I'm still going to do what I want to do. Then at that point, as the leader, you can then decide, okay, well, I've had this conversation with you. It's still not, we're still not making changes to get where we need to be as far as your performance and things like that. And then at that point, I mean, at least the that particular person is not blindsided because I've already tried to tell you what the issue is. You didn't want to listen. I told you what the consequences of you continuing to do this would be. You didn't want to listen. So now I have to, as the leader, I have to stay consistent and walk through those consequences for you, you know?
Hmm. You're spot on, Rachel. I appreciate what you have to say there. It's change the leader or change the leader, one or the other. I
Yeah.
mean, that's what's going to happen. Absolutely.
It's so funny because I teach graduate students in a MBA HR class, and so many of them they say, "Well, I don't feel comfortable having to terminate somebody," and I tell them all the time, you're not terminating somebody, you are following policy. You've already told somebody what their performance issues are. You've given them ample opportunities if you're doing your job correctly. You've given them ample opportunities. You've documented everything. At that point, you're just making sure that the whole entire organization is staying consistent. Because if you're not consistent, then we get into issues of discrimination and favoritism, and that's never good for any company. So, if you're one of my grad students listening, remember you're not firing people. People fire themselves when they choose not to do their job.
It's a great quote. I mean, I've had to do termination before, and it's simple in terms of documenting the process, but it's not easy. We're human beings.
Mm-mm,
You're exactly right. I don't
it's
want
not.
to have to terminate anyone,
Right.
but frankly, as I look back on some of those things, um, if done correctly, as you say, it ends up being best for both people. It just may not be the right environment or the right spot for them to be in, the right seat for them to be in. And if you do that correctly, you have a situation where they're not surprised, and they have an opportunity to maintain their integrity and ultimately succeed in life. It's not the end.
Hmm.
Um,
Hmm.
I
Yeah,
think,
and I should be
you know,
clear, like we shouldn't get excited about
right,
changing
right,
people's life because I mean, a termination is a very traumatic thing for a
sure.
lot of individuals. And I've been terminated from a position before. Somebody asked me to do something I thought was unethical, and I held my ground and I got released for it. Lo and behold, 6 months later, there was a lawsuit that if I was right, but I was
Hmm.
already let go at that point. It should never be easy to put that
That's
kind
right.
of stress on somebody. But at the same time, we have to make sure that we're being consistent as leaders and doing those hard things that are sometimes necessary.
Yeah, back to the observation. I mean, those other people on the team are watching. Okay.
Yeah,
And if you're tolerating that, the risk is back to the law of the lid. If you're not growing and you're not helping the team grow, those star performers, much like our kids will do at times, they will backslide or they will leave the organization if they recognize that, poor performance is being allowed to occur. And look, the
for
other
sure.
side of feedback as well is getting better at giving specific feedback when people are doing well. Too many
Right.
times we just say, "Hey, you're doing great," and they don't know exactly why they're doing great. We got to be
Right.
specific so we can continue to generate those positive actions that we want as well.
Right. Reinforce the behaviors that you want to see continuing to occur.
Absolutely.
Sure. So, you've been in leadership roles for a while, but if we could kind of reverse the clock, kind of get into a DeLorean and, go back in time, what would you tell the younger version of you about leadership?
Don't I wish I could back to 1985 that they had in Back to the Future. No doubt about it when that movie was out. And so, yeah, that shows my age. I think about a couple things, and I love the question because there's probably 20 answers that I give. What's been on my mind recently, especially with young leaders, and I got to believe you experience this with your students who are in MBA programs, is once you think you're done, you've just begun. When I came out of college, one of the first things that I said was, "Phew, I'm done with that studying stuff. No more reading. Now I can just, do my work that I thought I always wanted to do." And little did I know in 2 or 3 years that I was starting to fall behind, those that were developing around me. And I had to have a leader, thankfully, a mentor who came to me and gave me my first leadership book, The 21 Irrefutable Laws of Leadership, and reviewed every chapter with me in that journey or in that book, and started my journey on leadership development. I was hooked, but I can't think of a better way than to develop those habits to continuously grow. Back to something simple. I'm not a reader, and I didn't think I was as well. But little do we know, if we just read 10 pages a day, which might take us 10 minutes a day on a disciplinary standpoint, that's somewhere in the neighborhood of 12 to 14 leadership business books a year that we're reading to develop ourselves and to learn from others who have been on that journey already. So once you think you're done, you've just begun. It's a continuous improvement journey. The other is, don't be afraid to say, I need help. I think the uh, information that's out there to equip you and inspire you to be the leader that you want to be is available if you just go out and look for it. It's free. It's listening to podcasts just like this in terms of free information. It's reading or purchasing books and a small investment in books on a topic you might want to grow in. But it's also, frankly, at some point in your journey saying, I need someone else. It's a trainer in your fitness world, it's a nutritionist, or it's a coach, an executive coach that's going to help you take your performance to the next level, a place you wouldn't go on your own. And when you can take the chance to invest in that, I think that is powerful as well.
I love that. That is so good. Um, and again, I mean, if even if you let's say that the focus time is just not working, maybe you're in a season within your position that it's like all hands on deck. We have so many things going on. We're restructuring, we've acquired, we've merged, blah, 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 blah. Um, while you're, driving to and from work, listen, like you said, just listen
Hmm.
to, uh, your podcast, my podcast, any podcast, YouTube. Find somebody that inspires you, that motivates you for 10 minutes, while you're making that 10-minute walk after dinner, go listen to something that's going to rejuvenate you. I think oftentimes in our society, we're trying to find things to kind of numb us out. And while there's a time for that, I'm all for, the best Netflix movie that comes out. Let me go watch this movie.
Mhm.
Just being very intentional and recognizing that every moment that you invest in yourself is ultimately going to pay off in the long run. So,
I appreciate it. And I think about that too. Like there is one of the disciplines within that is reflection. Purposeful reflection will drive, really productive action. How frequently you do this is up to you, but I would encourage a discipline of weekly or monthly where you just sit down, pull out your calendar. Maybe if you have your goals set, pull out your goals and say, what went well for me this week? Or what went well for me this month, and what could have gone better for me this week or this month. Very intentional, just jotting those things down in a simple T diagram and then reflecting on those things. And again, if your faith drives that as well, as praying over those things as well and saying, hey, God, what are you teaching me here inside of this space? And once you've had the chance to look at that list, say, now, what do I need to keep doing, start doing, and stop doing to, again, back to that continuous development journey? Because I don't
mhm,
want to get stuck where I am today. I want to keep growing. I want to keep doing the things that are doing well, but I also want to stop or start doing something different in the area of things that be going better. And if you can take the time, 10 minutes, 15 minutes a week to sit down at the end of your week or at the end of your month and just intentionally reflect, the power of that exercise is something that can really lead you to greatness as well.
I love that. I love that. Well, now we're at the point of the episode where I like to call it the shameless plug. So I'll turn the floor over
Sure.
to you for the next couple of minutes. If there's anything that you'd like the audience to know about, if you've got any speaking engagements, books, podcasts, anything like that that you would like to recommend or you'd like to promote, now's a good time to do that.
Love that. Well, Rachel, again, thank you for the opportunity to chat with the listeners of your podcast. I think it's very important what you're doing. And look, if this conversation changes the direction or ultimately the trajectory of somebody's leadership development journey, I'll be pretty excited about it and would love to hear about that. From the shameless plug standpoint, if folks are interested in learning a little bit about what I teach on, what I consult, and what I coach on, CoachJohnGallagher.com is the best place to go. That's got my social media contact information there, but that also has an opportunity for you to take action. And if you want to make that choice where you want to get a coach, you can sign up for a free 30-minute coaching call. And we can talk about what is that biggest barrier that's keeping you from getting there. Maybe one thing you could do to overcome that barrier very quickly and understand if coaching might be helpful for you. You mentioned also maybe a shameless plug for what I'm reading. I just finished a book, The Power to Change by Craig Rochelle. And what I've said to others is I believe this is the faith-based atomic habits. And in many ways, to me, this book, as I went through and looked at some of those daily, weekly, monthly habits that I have that I need to continue to look at, he just anything Craig Rochelle does, his leadership podcast, his writing style, I really connect with it. And I think that's one of the things that's very important. Find someone that you are inspired by, to your point. You said that earlier, or that you connect with their writing style, because there's so many different individuals you can go out there and learn from, but find someone who impacts you. But
Mhm,
that's a book that I would suggest for all of your listeners right now is The Power to
mhm.
Change by Craig Rochelle.
Yeah, I would second that. Craig Groeschel is somebody that I use as part of my own personal development. So, yeah, if we concur on that
Hmm.
aspect of it, definitely, definitely. And I'll make sure to include all social media information and website information in the show notes. So if you're listening to this, you should be able to go look at the show notes and see all of that. And I really do encourage you to connect with John. I think that it can be really helpful. There's a lot of just I don't know what the right word would be, but if you're looking for something in your social media feed that's going to be a little bit more encouraging and a little more inspirational, then feel free to connect with him. We all need that from time to time, and you never know when just the right message or the right post is really going to kind of inspire you to make that change or to take the step forward. So, get rid of some of the noise out there and really try to invest in yourself and see things that are going to rejuvenate you instead of pull you down. John, thank you so much for taking your time out today to talk about some of these topics and to hopefully inspire others to embrace the beauty that is being uncommon.
Rachel, it's been a blast. Thank you so much for the opportunity.
Yeah. And if you're listening out there, if you did like what you heard, hit the subscribe button to make sure that you are notified whenever new content does come out. Again, share this episode with somebody that you think might need a little bit of encouragement. You can tag me, you can tag John. We are more than happy to come alongside this person and help support them and encourage them in any way possible. Remember, you are made to be a leader right where you are, wherever you're leading. The things that we talked about today can help you develop the roots of your leadership so you can weather any storm. Take care of yourself, take care of your team. You can 1000% do this. And until next time.